Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to talk about solar panels today and which solar panels maybe you should look at to buy for your off-grid power system. Now this can apply for anyone, whether you're looking at solar panels for a power station or whether you're looking at solar panels for your house or for a cabin. And yes, if you see this, well, I had some bone removed from my thumb and I got some bad arthritis in, so I'm a little limited to how much typing I can do to respond to comments, but I will continue to respond to comments. I'm pretty fast with one hand, so don't worry, we'll get to it. But yeah, I'm a beat up old jarhead, and that's what you're seeing here. Anyway, let's get on with the topic, solar panels. One of the things I see a lot is people asking about, well, what solar panels should I get, or how do I choose the solar panels that I need for my setup? And today I want to talk about that. But the first thing I want to say is don't allow yourself to get into what I like to call analysis paralysis. Sometimes guys will spend more time looking at efficiency and trying to figure out which kind of solar panel is the best for them and all that kind of stuff, and they end up not buying any solar panels for another year. So I would say first, don't do that. But today I'm going to get into the solar panels that you could look at and my opinion, and it's just my opinion, on what's worth buying. And by the way, well, you might find this interesting. Now, the first thing you need to do before choosing solar panels is you need to assess your energy needs. And I put out a video recently that I will link at the end of this video that will help you do that. And it's very important because knowing how many solar panels to buy is entirely dependent on, well, really two things. One, your budget, because if you need 20 solar panels and you can only afford 10, well, you're not getting 20. But two is your battery bank size. How big of a battery bank do you have, and how much solar energy can you get in your given region kind of determines that. I mean, if you don't know the size of your battery bank, then you need to flip to the end of this video, watch that one, and then come back and watch this one, because buying solar panels is entirely dependent on your battery bank. You need to know how big of a battery bank you're going to have before you buy any solar panels at all. So don't go out and buy solar panels without buying batteries first. And if you're looking at doing this as a grid type thing, well, that's not the right video for you, so I apologize for that. This is not for someone that's looking to do grid tie. I'm talking about people that are building off-grid cabins, doing an off-grid system, buying solar panels, for example, for a power station that they're using in emergency situations. This video is for you. For those that want to do grid tie, well, I don't do grid tie, so you'll have to look at Will Pros or someone like that. Maybe they do. Now let's move on. So the first thing you should look at is what size of solar panel do you think you need? And I'm going to tell you, for the most part, in my opinion, bigger is better. If I was going to go out and look at solar panels today, I'm not even going to bother looking at 100-watt solar panels. And I know there's a lot of guys out there that I see post on social media, I got 20 100-watt solar panels, now what do I do? And I'm thinking, well, why 20 100-watt solar panels, which is 2,000 watts, when you could get 4 500-watt solar panels and have 2,000 watts? I mean, bigger is better, folks, unless bigger is so much more expensive per watt that it doesn't make financial sense to go there. But I did some research today, and I found that, frankly, solar panels, new ones now, not used, most of the places I looked were running around 40 cents a watt. And that didn't matter whether they were bifacial or monocrystalline or poly. It didn't seem to matter. They all ran about 40 cents a watt for brand new panels. Now, yes, I've seen used panels online where people say they get them for 16 cents a watt. But honestly, buying used panels is another part of this conversation a little bit later, and we'll get into that. The next thing to consider in buying solar panels is voltage. Now, one of the things I see a lot of is I'm buying 12-volt solar panels, or I'm buying 24-volt or 48. Well, honestly, there's no such thing. A lot of people are probably going to scream at me and say, wait, yes, there is. No, there's not. If somebody says they have 12-volt solar panels, they're in that 18 to 20-volt range. And that's an important thing to understand about solar panels. The voltage only matters if you're only buying 1 or 2 panels. It really doesn't matter. If you're going to get one solar panel and you've got a 12-volt battery, then yeah, get an 18-volt or 20-volt panel, that's fine. But if you're looking at building an off-grid system or powering up, say, your RV, or even just making a house off-grid, then the voltage of the panel isn't as important because you're going to add them up, or at least you can. You can take your solar panels and run them in series. So let's say you want to build a 48-volt system and you're looking at some 20-volt panels that are maybe half the price as panels that are over 50 volts. And you're thinking, well, gosh, can I use those? Well, of course you can. You put 3 of those in series, you got 60 volts. And that actually means that the MPP charge controller has less of a difference between the voltage it's going to provide to the batteries to charge them up and the voltage coming in from the sun. So the amount of voltage that the panel has, it does matter, but it's more about how you can configure a solar array to provide the power necessary to charge up the battery bank. So don't look at panels as 12 volts, 20 volts, or 36 or 48 or whatever. Just look at them as, I'm going to build a solar array. You don't just buy the panel. You're going to buy multiple panels, unless you only need one panel. Well, then, yeah, it matters a little more. But even then, let's say you've got a power station that only needs 12 to 24 volts to power it. Yeah, then you're going to need to buy a solar panel that fits in that range. But if you have a power station that can take 80 volts, well, you can put a 50-volt panel in. Be perfectly fine. The other thing to consider is amperage. You need to make sure that if you're going to build a parallel solar array, that your amperage doesn't add up too much for any charge controller out there. And by that I mean, if you've got 10 amp panels and you buy 20 of them and you put them all in parallel, well, you've got 200 amps. That would take some awfully big wires and a monstrous charge controller that I don't even know if it exists. But if you put them in series, you still only have 20 amps. You just have a lot of voltage. And again, you'd have to look at that. So when buying solar panels, it's important to pay attention to that voltage, not because it's 12, 24, or 48, but because you're going to have to build an array that's either series or parallel or both, a series parallel array, that you're going to add up some of that voltage and some of that amperage, and you need to keep that within the boundaries of the charge controller that you purchased for that array. That's very important. We can get into charge controllers on another video. All right, so let's talk about panels. There are several types of panels out there. We've got monocrystalline, we've got polycrystalline, we've got thin film panels, and we've got bifacial panels. And the fifth one that I like to talk about that you've probably never heard before is the what I can afford panels, and we'll talk about that. Monocrystalline panels are highly efficient and space-saving because they've got better energy density than a polycrystalline panel. Polycrystalline panels are generally more affordable, but they are a little less efficient. And we'll talk about something else with polycrystalline. They may also be a little bit better in low light conditions than monocrystalline. There's a debate there. Then you have thin film panels that are lightweight, flexible, they're less efficient, so it's something to consider, especially if space is an issue, but they can also be better in low light conditions. So if you live in an area with a lot of cloud cover, you might actually benefit from polycrystalline or thin film panels more than you might with monocrystalline. And then we have the bifacial panels, which used to be the most expensive. But when I went and looked up today at some of the websites that I'll mention, I noticed that bifacial panels are running about the same as monocrystalline are now today. So that's something else to look at. Be sure to look at price per watt, especially when buying new panels. Now, I mentioned bifacial panels. These are a great new option. They're still fairly new in the world, but I guess they've been around long enough. They certainly weren't around 15 years ago when I bought mine. But this is a great option today, and you can get power from them on the backside. That's why they're called bifacial. They typically have like I want to say it's about a 60-40 split or something like that, where you'll get maybe 500 watts off the front, and you might get 200 or 300 watts or whatever off the back. That's actually pretty impressive. And one of the things you can do with bifacial panels is you can stand them straight up and down. They'll get sun on both sides. And a lot of people actually face them east and west instead of due south. Because normally, like with a mono or polycrystalline panel or even thin film, you want to face those to the south. so that you can get that maximum sun exposure on them at peak solar production. But with bifacial panels, because you can get on both sides of them, if you have them facing east in the morning, then they're going to get maximum production in the morning, but then in the evening, you're also going to get solar production as well. And if you build an array so that you've also got some south-facing panels, you could really capitalize on maximum solar production that way. So if it were me and money was no object, I'd probably put some bifacial panels facing east and west, and some monocrystalline panels, or maybe just bifacial, facing to the south. And that would definitely work nicely. Now, those used to be more expensive, but I found them at 40 cents a watt, and I didn't look at all of them, but I did find some at 40 cents a watt at Sunelec when I looked this morning, which was the same price I found monocrystalline panels. Now, the other type of panel I mentioned is what can you afford? Don't allow yourself to get analysis paralysis. If you can't afford bifacials and you find some polys that are half the price of bifacial panels, well, get the polys. Let's say you find some 200 watt poly panels that are 20 cents a watt, and you find some bifacial panels at 40 cents a watt. Well, you could get 1,000 watts of polys for half the price that you can get 1,000 watts of bifacials or monos. So it's worth looking at those panels. Don't let people tell you that the only thing that you should buy today is bifacial panels, because that's silly. Other people are really good at spending your money. It's an expression in the Sawyer's forum that I hang out on, because I run a sawmill too, by the way. If you haven't looked at all my videos on my channel, there's probably a few hundred on running sawmills. I run a sawmill. That's part of my off-grid build. But my point is just that other people are very, very good at spending your money. Only you know how much money you can spend. So I don't care if there's a fancy new super duper solar panel out there that makes a bifacial panel look like garbage, but if that panel's $1,000 a watt, doesn't matter how good it is, because I couldn't afford it, but I could afford polys, and I'll buy polys, and guess what? They'll work. And I think that and I don't even remember because I put them in back in 2010, but I'm pretty sure my ground mount panels are polycrystalline panels. They're blue, which is usually an indicator of a polycrystalline panel. You know, I suspect those are polys, and guess what? Polys also tend to produce more power than they're rated at. Mine have produced more, about, well, I don't remember what the percentage was, but it's a 615 watt array, and it gave me 672 watts in peak sun. So polys can be a good option. Never turn that down. Now, I also mentioned used earlier. A lot of people are buying used panels today. That may be perfectly fine. If you can test the panels and make sure they produce the power that they're supposed to, just know that you're not getting a warranty. The other thing that you can consider is non-UL rated panels. My panels are not UL rated. Well, if you're building an off-grid cabin in the woods that's not even going to have an inspection, and I know blasphemy to some, but if that's the case for you, maybe you're in some northern area that's in the middle of nowhere and nobody really cares what you're doing out there, so you build your off-grid power system. Do you really need UL-rated panels? UL rating is nothing more than a government stamp that says that this company proved that their stuff worked the way it's supposed to. And I've looked at panels where I had an option, a non-UL rated version of the exact same panel with the exact same specs, or a UL rated one that cost me twice as much. So I bought the non-UL panels. Now, 14, 15 years later, guess what? Those panels still work perfectly fine. And that's something else to consider. People are going to tell you that your panels are going to be no good after 10 years. Ignore them. Nonsense. I know someone that had a set of panels for 30 years and was still getting good power out of them. So don't allow yourself to get analysis paralysis. Use your budget to make decisions on what panels you can buy. Yeah, bifacials are probably the best out there today, but maybe you can only afford polys. So buy the polys then. Maybe you've got low light conditions and thin film works for you. There's nothing wrong with buying those. Efficiency ratings are great, but again, analysis paralysis. Don't get caught up in 1 or 2% different efficiency rating. I don't personally care. If my panels are 18% efficient and your panels are 21% efficient, but I could afford mine and I couldn't afford yours, well, guess what? Then 18 is perfectly good for me. Hey, you got to think about your budget too. If you're a millionaire, you're not even watching me on YouTube, so move on, right? Just go pay somebody else to build your system. It's good to check warranties. Obviously, a more reputable company is going to have a longer warranty, maybe 25 years on their panels. that could be a big benefit for you. So it is definitely something to look at. There are so many companies out there selling panels. So for me personally, I wouldn't buy panels off of, say, Amazon, because I've never seen panels on Amazon I would buy. I would go to places that I have no affiliation with, by the way. I have no affiliation whatsoever with sunelect.com. But I know that if I go to Sunelect, I can get good quality panels by the pallet at a good price. And maybe you don't need a pallet. You can always call them and find out if they've got some that aren't palletized. They've got warehouses all over the country, and that's another thing to consider. Where are the panels coming from? If you're buying panels from 3,000 miles away, would it be cheaper just to buy maybe a different panel that's closer to you that will do the job? Probably. So look at that. I personally like Sunelect. Alt eStore's always been a good source of solar supplies. Backwoods Solar's another. There are lots out there. I've never bought anything from Signature Solar, but I've heard they're pretty good. It's worth looking at those stores. So get off Amazon. I'm sorry. I know people love Amazon. There's some great reasons to buy stuff on Amazon. I've always got links to stuff on Amazon. But honestly, folks, if you're looking for solar panels, go somewhere that's what they specialize in, because that's going to be better for you, I think, in the long run. And don't be afraid to call these companies up and talk to them. Call up Sunelect, just sunelect.com. Call them up and say, hey guys, what have you got in stock? I need, 1,000 watts, or I need 2,000 or 3,000 watts. What have you got that can build me that system? Do you have maybe some bifacials or some monos or some polys? What have you got? How much is the cost? Can you split up this pallet? Call Backwoods Solar. Call Signature Solar. Call Alt eStore. Do your legwork, because if you need to save a little money, you might find that you can get the same solar panels from a competitor at a little better deal. It's worth doing a little research for those. So to recap, the first thing, the most important thing for you is, what size battery bank do you have? I'll put a link right up here in the card for you to check out the video that I put out that would help you decide that. Once you know how big that battery bank is, you could start looking at solar panels, plug them into that spreadsheet that's linked in that video. I'll also link it down below so that you could start looking. Maybe you've got a 400 amp hour battery bank and you're looking at some 500 watt panels. And now you need to figure out what the amperage is on those panels and start figuring out how many you need. That spreadsheet will tell you. So maybe you look at some 550 watt bifacial panels. You could put the figures in the spreadsheet. It'll tell you how many you need based on your solar production expected by your latitude, longitude in your area. All that kind of information is pretty much on that sheet. So it's really good to just use that. Go out and look at these panels. So do your research. Know how much you need before you start looking at solar panels. Know how big that battery bank is. Choosing the right panels can be a game changer for you. You're looking at something that's going to last you a very long time, so I kind of caution away from the cheapest options. Don't go to, Harbor Freight, or maybe go like on Amazon and buy some of those panels you can find on Amazon, because I don't think those are the best panels. I think you can get a lot better panels, probably for better prices too, at places that I've mentioned. It's worth calling them first. And depending on your budget, you may be looking at polys or bifacials or monos. It doesn't really matter. Don't let yourself get caught up into the modern, this is what you have to have. Again, other people spend your money really, really well. But you're the only one that has to pay the piper at the end of the day. So do your research, know how much you need in total power produced, and then go out there, find the right panels. I hope this helps somebody out. And that's all I got for today, folks. I'll drop another video right here for you to check out. Thanks for watching. The Old Jarhead out.